For over 20 years, One Piece fans waited for this moment without even realizing it was already being built since the very first arc of the series, because that's what's happening right now in Elbaph. This isn't just another fighting arc. This is the moment Oda decided, once and for all, to turn every single Straw Hat into something they've never been before, and the most shocking part isn't just how many power-ups are showing up. It's how each one was planted years, chapters, even decades ago, just waiting for this exact moment to bloom. Franky just received a fuel source that literally changes the physics of his body. Zoro is on the verge of unlocking a power he already has inside him without even knowing it. Sanji is in a fight that can only be won if he awakens something only 2 people in the entire crew possess. And Usopp, the guy who's always considered himself the weakest of the group, might be 1 chapter away from becoming a legend among giants. The question nobody's asking is this: why did Oda choose Elbaph? And why right now, to unleash all of this at once? The answer is hidden in small details that most people scrolled right past. And once you connect all of them, you'll realize this isn't a coincidence. This is the plan Oda has been building since Little Garden. Let's go back to the beginning, because it's impossible to understand the scale of what's happening now without remembering where it all started, back in Little Garden. In the early arcs of the series, the Straw Hats meet Dory and Brogy, 2 giant warriors locked in an eternal duel of honor. Even back then, Oda was already planting the seed of Elbaph as a sacred land, a territory of raw strength, loyalty, and ancient history. Since then, we knew that at some point in the journey, the crew would reach the land of the giants. What nobody expected was the scale of what would happen once they finally got there. We're at a point in the story where the world government is closer than ever. The Holy Knights have started showing their cards. And Scopper Gaban, the former right-hand man of the Pirate King, revealed information that changes the rules of the game completely. The only way to permanently injure a Holy Knight, stopping their regeneration, is through King's Haki. This isn't a small detail. This is a power lock placed deliberately by Oda. And right now, within the Straw Hats, only 2 confirmed members possess this Haki, Luffy and Zoro, except Zoro didn't even know he had it. That's our starting point. The crew arrived in Elbaph needing more strength than ever before, at a moment when most of them still don't have access to the level of power the upcoming battles will demand. But that's exactly where things start getting strange. Now, here's the part most fans haven't connected yet. Chapter 1176 quietly delivered a scene that looks small but might be one of the most important clues of the entire arc, when Gaban reveals that another member of the Straw Hats, besides Luffy, possesses King's Haki. The manga panel shows both Zoro and Sanji at the same time. Not just Zoro, both of them, and Sanji himself, in that same moment, turns to Gaban and asks directly if he has that power too. Oda cuts the answer, on purpose. This is a classic suspense technique, when an author deliberately cuts off an obvious answer mid-scene. They're signaling that it matters, and that the confirmation is coming later, through action, not dialogue. And there's another hidden layer here that barely anyone caught, the parallel between the trios. There's the Roger Pirates monster trio Roger, Rayleigh, and Gaban. And there's the Straw Hats monster trio Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji. Luffy mirrors Roger, Zoro mirrors Rayleigh, and Sanji mirrors Gaban. If that symmetry is intentional, and with Oda, symmetries are rarely accidental, it means Sanji is destined to reach the same kind of power Gaban himself possesses, and it's Sanji who's on the battlefield right now, against an enemy who might be impossible to defeat without that exact power, and this might be where Oda left his biggest clue. Let's build this theory piece by piece, because every detail here fits together almost perfectly. Sanji vs. Killingham. Killingham is immortal. He regenerates. And as we already established, the only way to stop that regeneration is through King's Haki. Sanji is, right now, in a fight he cannot win with the tools he currently has. Narratively, this is what we call a dead-end wall. The character gets pushed into a situation where their current power simply isn't enough, and the only way out is to evolve. And when does this usually happen with Sanji specifically? When he's about to lose someone he loves and has no other option left. That's the emotional pattern Oda repeatedly uses to trigger power breakthroughs in this character. If this turns out to be true, an Ifrit jam-coated in King's Haki would be, without exaggeration, one of the most anticipated moments of the final saga. Now Zoro, here the situation is different, because Zoro already has King's Haki. The problem was never the existence of the power. The problem is control. Gaban reveals something crucial. Zoro's Haki constantly leaks out of him, with zero conscious control. Enma, his sword, forces that power out during battles. In other words, the sword has been doing the work Zoro never learned to do himself, and according to Gaban, that's an enormous waste. This means Elbaph is, most likely, the setting where Zoro finally learns to control that power consciously, not through the sword, but through himself, and once that happens, there's a natural next step in his journey, the Black Blade. The Black Blade is the only thing still standing between Zoro and being recognized as the greatest swordsman in the world. And Elbaph just happened to show exactly how a Black Blade is created. Here's the detail almost nobody talked about. Ragnar, the squirrel Raidotosker's hammer, is a black weapon, functionally the same principle as a black blade, just applied to a hammer instead. And Gerald's story reveals exactly how Ragnar turned black. Raidatosker infused his own soul and will into the weapon. It's not just Haki, it's will, it's essence. It's the soul of the wielder fusing with the material of the weapon itself. Now think about Zoro. He doesn't just carry his own will. He carries Kuina's will too, the promise they made as children, the dream the two of them shared before her death. Zoro isn't chasing the title of greatest swordsman in the world just for himself. He's doing it for her too. This means the missing piece. For the Wado Ichimonji to become a Black Blade might not be some new technique or special. Training.it might literally be the will Zoro has already been carrying for years, finally reaching the point where it transforms the sword's steel. And remember, as long as Mihawk holds the Yoru and Zoro doesn't have his own Black Blade, their final duel simply cannot happen within the logic Oda has built. Elbaph might be exactly where that transformation begins, but Zoro and Sanji aren't the only ones getting attention here. Because, suddenly, a completely unexpected detail emerges. The first one to evolve in Elbaph wasn't either of them. It was Franky, and nobody saw that coming. Most people, including experienced theorists, were betting Usopp would be the first to get an upgrade in Elbaph, given how much this island means to him since Little Garden. But Oda went against expectations. Lilith, the Vegapunk stationed on Elbaph, watches Franky in combat and raises a simple but devastating question. Why does a cyborg with technology comparable to the pacifistas still run on plain cola as a fuel source? Her answer comes in the form of action. She absorbs the heat from a fire at Elbaph's school and converts that energy into a brand new substance, Super Vega Cola. And here's the detail that turns this from a simple upgrade into a full paradigm shift. The reference behind this Super Vega Cola is heavy water, where hydrogen atoms are replaced with tritium, a radioactive isotope. In practical terms, within One Piece's logic, Franky went from running on a simple combustion engine to operating much closer to a nuclear power source, the same principle behind the mother flame we saw in Egghead. With this new fuel, he's able to destroy one of the nightmare beasts in a single attack, a level of destructive power he simply never had before. And what this opens up for the future is even bigger. Franky is now standing next to the most advanced living scientist on an island that holds a laboratory at least 3,000 years old and the largest atom tree in the world, the same material the Thousand Sunny was built from. If he keeps getting access to that knowledge and that material, both the ship and his own body could go through upgrades we haven't even begun to imagine. And Franky is just the start of a list that keeps growing. Nami is about to get her own moment after Zeus is defeated by a nightmare beast, exposing the fact that the Clima-Tact was never actually designed to work with Zeus's spirit inside it. It just absorbed the power without any real structure. With Lilith nearby, the same scientist behind the Seraphim, there's a real possibility of a full redesign of the device. There's also a quieter path here, developing observation Haki, something that already makes sense for a navigator who's always had a natural sensitivity for reading the environment. Usopp, on the other hand, might be living the exact moment Oda has reserved for him since Little Garden. Armament Haki would be the bare minimum he needs to actually land hits on Logia users, something essential in an arc where the enemies operate on a whole different level of power. There's also a theory that he awakens King's Haki himself after all. He's already lied twice about having that power, and Usopp's lies have a track record of becoming reality. And there's a chance, even if brief, That he gets to wield Ragnar at some point during the battle. A single moment like that would be enough to turn him into a legend among the giants forever. Robin has the quietest path of all, but maybe the most logical one. Coating her demon fleur limbs with armament Haki would make them nearly impossible to restrain. Chopper carries a mystery of his own. He's never displayed the signature smoke that comes with every true Zone awakening. Something Luffy and even Rob Lucci both have. That suggests his monster point, obtained through rumble balls, is a forced approximation, not the real awakening. Elbaph could be the stage where he finally awakens his fruit for real, with no external substance needed, and Jin carries maybe the crew's biggest silent mystery since joining. He's never once been put into a fight that actually pushed him to his limit. In simple terms, we still haven't seen his real ceiling. When you put all these pieces together, it becomes clear that Elbaph isn't just another action arc in One Piece. It's the moment Oda decided to settle the score on years of narrative groundwork laid since the very beginning of the series. Little Garden, the monster trio, Kuina's will, Usopp's long-standing weakness, Chopper's missing smoke, Jinbe's untested potential. Every single Straw Hat is being pushed, deliberately, to the exact breaking point that will force them to become who they need to be before the final confrontation against the world, government, and maybe the most striking part of all is realizing this isn't improvisation. It's a narrative that Oda has been writing, chapter by chapter, for more than 2 decades. The question that remains is this: once all these powers finally come together, will any of these Straw Hats even look like the same characters we met at the start of the journey? If everything we covered today gets confirmed in the upcoming chapters, Elbaph is going to be remembered as the arc that redefined the entire crew before the final battle. But what about you? Which of these upgrades do you most want to see confirmed first? Do you think Zoro will actually manage to control King's Haki before he leaves the island? Drop your theory in the comments, because this discussion is just getting started.